You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related, from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
What's going on, everybody? I'm back. We're here for another episode. And today, I got something different. Instead of the positive and encouraging stories and messages, I wanted to bring something a little lighthearted to the podcast, especially with, just everything that's still going on today in the world. Eventually, we'll come to the end of this. I do believe there's a light at the end of this tunnel. But in the meantime, we got to make the best of our situations. And for me, I like to laugh. So something that I do on my website when I interview runners is I always ask them for a story of either their their weirdest experience or their funniest experience. And sometimes they can be the same, but the idea started because back, I don't know, I want to say it was in my first year of running, maybe the second year of running, but I used to run at 2, sometimes 2:30 in the morning. I was really into it. I wanted to not really necessarily get it out of the way, but I was looking forward to doing my run and then being able to enjoy the rest of my day off. So I used to get up really early, 2:30, sometimes 3 in the morning. I'd go and run, typically a 10K, and that was it. So this one particular morning, I want to say a Saturday morning. It could have been a Sunday morning, but definitely a weekend day. People are out the night before, coming home from the club, late night, early morning partying. Trying to set the picture here for you. It's pitch black, dark, particularly where I was running. I was on the main road running down this long stretch of road that tends to be a little bit secluded if you're in between the sections where there are some streetlights. Basically, I'm running. I got my headphones on, and I'm just in the zone. I'm trying to, improve my pace and my time. And I, see the headlights coming behind me, which was normal. It happens all the time. But these were approaching me slower. So first thing I do is look to see if I'm approaching an entrance to the cemetery or one of the complex neighborhoods, along that stretch of roads. Maybe they're waiting for me so they could turn in somewhere. That wasn't the case. So now I'm a little curious. I kind of glance and notice it's driving slowly. So, I was aware and prepared for sprint mode taking off to protect myself, not knowing what was about to happen, if anything was about to happen. The car pulls alongside me, and I'm looking out of the side of my eye. Finally, I'm just like, all right, obviously they're trying to get my attention. So I look over, and it was like I would say a gentleman my age. He asked me, how do I get to the turnpike? All right, simple as that. Makes sense. I would get asked that often. I gave him directions, told him detailed directions how to get there. And all was good. He said thank you. And I started running again. Put my headphones back in. Kept going. Now the headlights are slowly approaching me again. And now I'm getting aggravated because I've already had to stop once in the middle of my run. Now I'm like, what do you want? So I'm ignoring him, but he's still driving alongside me. So now I'm thinking, okay, am I going to get kidnapped? Am I going to get robbed? What's going to happen? So I annoyingly and in aggravation pull out the one headphone and look at him. And first he says something and I couldn't hear him. And I said, excuse me. And then I could hear him clearly. He asked me if I would like oral sex. You can use your imagination in the way that he would have asked me honestly, but I was so confused and blown away, but also aggravated that now I had to stop a second time in my running for this guy that now I realized didn't even really want or need those directions in the first place. That I just, with all the thoughts that were running through my mind at the time, I just put my headphones back in and took off with the intention of making up the time that I just lost for those 2 times having to stop and entertain this guy. And it was an experience that when I got back home and I started telling people and I posted it on social media, a lot of people thought it was funny. Some thought it was scary. Some thought it was a joke and I made it up. Like, I hear all these different stories that people tell of experiences they've gone through, and to be a guy and go through something like that, maybe we don't expect that to happen. Like, I did a half marathon in South Beach, Miami once. It was weird to be catcalled by gay men. It's like, women experience this when they're running and men are catcalling them and just yelling out obscene, perverted, disgusting stuff to them. But to be a man and having someone do it to you. Now, if it was a woman, we would probably find it funnier. We would probably even take it as a joke. But knowing that we were running through a predominantly gay area, and knowing that these men were pretty serious, especially us in our running attire, to me, it still was funny, but it was weird. And it made me think, this is what women go through, but in a more serious and dangerous experience. So for me, it was eye-opening. It's one of those things that, when my wife goes out running or walking, I'm always nervous because you don't know what people are going to do. You don't know who's going to be out there at that time. You don't think about it. You just think, I'm going to go for this run and be back home. But you never really know. You always hope for the best. One other story of mine that I want to share before I get into some funny stories and crazy stories that I've gathered from social media. 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I was in Niagara Falls. Pretty cool experience because I got to run from the US into Canada and back. Definitely a cool experience and a unique experience to run into another country and back. Having to carry your passport with you. Good thing I had gone into Canada by foot the day before doing the run, because I didn't know at the time you would need money to get back into the US. You didn't have to pay to get into Canada, but to get back into the US, you had to have $1. That's a whole nother story. But thankfully, I had went in there for, just sightseeing and experience the day before, or I could have been screwed. I had my phone. I could have called my friend that was with me and been like, hey, can you come to the border and bring $1 for me? that would have been a story in itself. But, I'm running and mind you, I'm a South Floridian. I'm used to the hot, the heat, the humidity. It was in the 20s. So I was extra bundled up, just trying to be warm and comfortable while I ran. Each day it was getting colder. So on the last day that I was there, the last morning, and again, this was, I'd get up 5:30, 6 in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But I was getting out there early because, again, I wanted to get the run finished and then enjoy the rest of my vacation, sightseeing and all that. But also just to be able to run without, all the tourists and people out there, to be able to run free and go where I wanted. So I'm coming back into the U.S. and, you have to go through customs. As I'm standing there and I give the guy my ID, he's running whatever he's running just to make sure I'm clear and good to enter the U.S. basically. While I'm standing there, the guy, there was 2 of them, and one of them was looking at me and he kind of smirks. He goes, hey, just so you know, your beard's melting. And I didn't realize it, but because I had been running and sweating and I'm not used to this, the sweat had formed little, icicles on my beard. And now that I was in the warmth of the customs building and standing there for so long, the ice was starting to melt and my beard was dripping. So I looked down and there's like a mini puddle formed in the customs area. And I kind of, joked, you're going to need a mop to clean this up. And, to me, that was funny. It's something unique again that I probably never will experience again. But with that said, I wanted to get into 4 elite running stories, and then we'll jump into some everyday runner stories that I gathered as well. One of them being Mike Wardian. His story was one time, it was the day after Halloween, and he was running. He tripped and fell, cracked his face open, broke some of his teeth, which caused blood to drip down his face, onto his clothing, onto his hands, his arms, all over him basically. Everyone that was seeing him, they just figured it was Halloween related. Maybe it was from his costume the night before. He was just continuing the Halloween tradition into the next day, but he ended up getting up and running to the hospital. Instead of going home, he just ran to the hospital and, they took care of him. But how crazy is that to injure yourself, bust your face open, break teeth, you're bleeding all over, and people aren't offering to help because they figure it's a Halloween costume and you're probably joking around and being silly, but you're hurt and you could possibly be in danger. But that's, sometimes that's reality, where because you run so much like he does, they probably seen him before and figured, oh, he's just being silly because he runs in costumes. He's done it many a times, broken records in costumes. They probably figured he was doing something like that again. And really, it was, serious situation. Another one, which is definitely not in the funny aspect. This one is a very serious, I don't even know if this would fall under the weirdest category. Hillary Allen, another ultra runner, during a 50K race, at the halfway point, she was on a ridge, and one of the rocks, the ground, the footing under her gave way, and she ended up falling 150 feet down, the mountain. She ended up breaking 12 bones in total, popping several ligaments, and they had to get a helicopter to evacuate her from where she had ended up and where she landed. She's okay now. This was years ago, but that's something I don't think about because I'm down here in South Florida. I'm always running on sidewalks, road, maybe the levee. We have one little hill that if you fall down it's just grass and you're going to end up in grass. So I don't think about things like that, but that's something that if you're in maybe the north or the west coast or internationally where you have mountains and things like that, you got to think about that. And that's crazy. I can't even imagine what that experience was like and how painful and scary that must have been, and then to continue running after that. And now every time you enter, a terrain like that, it has to run into the back of your mind every once in a while. Another one, hopefully I say her name right, Kiera Diamato. So Kiera has this route that she runs pretty much every afternoon. She's almost always running it in the same direction. And through a portion of it, there's a section of woods that she runs through, typically never sees anyone in that area, and there's this like fence gate section that she has to kind of stop and walk through. She can't run through it. For some reason, when she's walking through that area, it makes her feel the need to use the bathroom. So typically she'll hide behind a tree and she'll pee. But one day she was actually running the opposite direction of that route, and same thing, she stops to go to the bathroom. But this time she notices there's a sign that says video surveillance in use. She looks up and notices there's a camera pointing right at the tree. And it just weirds her out. It creeps her out. It freaks her out. Because now she's wondering, is it real? Is it just, Who knows? This person could have so much footage of her peeing. It's creepy, but hopefully it's fake. The last elite runner story I want to share real quick is Great Britain runner Mark Scott. He was on a 10-mile training run, and 4 miles into the run had a seizure. After kind of gathering himself from this, he finishes the 6 miles, gets back to his car, goes to the hospital. They kept him for 24 hours. He ends up 2 days later winning the 10,000 meters NCAA title. Like, that's crazy. First off, you're 4 miles into a run, you have a seizure. I don't know if he had his phone or had a way to contact anybody. Maybe he was used to it. I don't know. I just think if I had a seizure 4 miles into a 10-mile run, to me, going back 4 miles instead of doing an extra 2 to get back to my finish, I would have just turned around and went back until I found somebody to maybe drive me back to my car. But that kind of shows you the seriousness of some of us as runners, and we get in our zone and you know, we have injuries or situations that we've experienced and we realize, we'll be all right. This has happened before. I'll be okay. Sometimes our toughness can be our strength and our weakness. So now I just want to share some stories that I gathered. First story, this one runner actually found a saddled horse and ended up riding it down the trail. Now, I don't know how far they rode it. I don't know if they're familiar with riding horses. I would assume so because they got on the horse comfortably and the horse didn't take off. But how weird is that to be running, find a horse just randomly on a trail, saddling it and riding it. Now, I do wonder, did they stop their watch? Because that would be cheating. That'd be getting some speed and distance into the run. So I'm assuming they stopped the watch and didn't use that. That would be cheating. Cheating yourself, at least. Another story is this female runner who was 5 miles from the finish of a 50K, thought she had peed herself, but what happened was the crotch seam of her running tights gave out, and she discovered that she was about a 1/4 inch from showing what she says, or what she calls her lady bits, to the finish line crew. So that's got to be crazy, because I remember seeing a story or a video, but this guy was, full sprint trying to get a record or a personal record, and his junk comes out the side of his shorts and it's just flapping around for the last 1/4 mile. And even when he finished and he's like trying to gather himself and walking, it's still just dangling. Everything is exposed and just dangling, and somebody had to cover him. I think I would be able to feel that, but maybe because you're chasing a record, you at that point don't care. But I think I still would. I would have reached down and tried to adjust myself. But another one, this runner saw a naked man swimming in a canal. Later found out the person was from a mental health facility. So I'm assuming they escaped the mental health facility, went for a swim. I would like to know if this was at night, during the day. There's so many questions I have for this one. Like, I remember one run that I did where I saw a gentleman face down in the grass. It was like 5:30, 6 in the morning. I'm running, and I didn't know if he was just passed out drunk. Maybe he was dead. I wanted no part of it. I just kept running. I could have called the cops, but I kind of stupidly was like, oh, then I'll have to stop and talk to them, and I just want to do my run. So I have an issue. I need to stop being so focused on myself when I'm running. If there's reason to stop and potentially save somebody or help somebody, I'm gonna have to remind myself of that from now on. Another runner was running pre-dawn past a local park with a lake, and another naked individual. This one, it was a naked lady and a topless man, and a cop car pulled up. She loudly exclaimed, "I'm so glad you're here. We went swimming and I can't find my dress." So, yeah. So you went swimming, you can't find your dress. That's a good excuse, I guess. I don't know. I mean, apparently the lake has a sign that says caution gators. So why would you go swimming in a lake that has gators? First off, that's kind of giving yourself away as lying. Another one, now this one's definitely a local story. So anybody in South Florida will know Boyd Anderson High School. Apparently, while this runner was passing Boyd Anderson High School, the janitor was locking the gates and a car came around the corner and just started shooting. The janitor ended up getting hit in the shoulder, and the runner ended up doing what they proclaim as a 3-minute mile to get away. I can believe it, because in the moment like that, you freak out and your adrenaline hits you and you just take off as long and fast as you can to get away from that type of situation. Hopefully the janitor was okay. Like, was this a planned attack against the janitor? Was it just a random drive-by? Again, so many questions. This is crazy. Another story, this runner was running down the street and he saw this particular runner, typically most mornings, always out there, not something that you think too much of. Typically when you see somebody from a distance, you're like, oh, that's so-and-so, or that's that person again. For this runner, they're running down the street, they see this person coming towards them like they typically do, but noticed something looked a little strange, only to find out as they got closer to each other, this guy was running with a shirt, gloves, but no bottoms. So his parts were just flapping everywhere. And as he's running, apparently he just waved to him like normal, like nothing happened, and just kept going. So makes you wonder, was he running drunk? Was it a dare? Because I'm thinking, if you have on gloves, that means it has to be cold. So I don't know. He had a top on and gloves, but no bottoms. And he's running in the morning. So it's only going to get brighter. Maybe he lost his shorts in the middle of the run somehow. I don't know. It's crazy. This is crazy. The last story I want to share, a runner who mid-run comes across a car that's upside down with the driver outside arguing with the cops about how she's still sober. Like, your car is upside down. I'm pretty sure you're wobbling. Your speech is slurred. They can smell the alcohol on you, on your breath, or see your eyes glazed, dilated, whatever. I'm pretty sure they know. I remember like a similar story in the fact that I was running, and like a half a mile into my run, there's an intersection that people run this red light all the time. And there was a car upside down against the wall, and it was still dark. I couldn't see, if anyone was in it. And again, me being me, especially at the time where I was really focused on speed and trying to get faster, I just kept running. I didn't stop. That's not cool. I should have stopped. I should have made sure, if somebody was in there, if they were okay. I noticed there was a school bus on the other side of the street, and I started to make the connection as I was running by that somehow the bus and that vehicle were related to the wreck. Eventually, when I got home, I checked the news, and sure enough, the car hit the bus while running the red light and wrecked. I don't remember if they were okay, but I'm assuming they unfortunately died, because the wreck was nasty. All these stories just go to show you that you think when you're going out the door, you're putting your shoes on, whatever you're doing pre-run, stretching, all that stuff, you think, all right, I'm going to go for this run and I'm going to come home. You don't think about what you might see, what you might experience. There are so many stories I could tell, and I'm sure everyone else could tell. the funny things that happen, the dangerous things that happen, all of that stuff, everything in between, animals chasing you, whether it's dogs or wildlife, people. They're animals too, I guess, the way they act sometimes. So yeah, I just wanted to do an episode where I shared some funny and crazy stories about running, just so people could realize that we all experience some crazy stuff while running, and it's actually more normal than we think. We might not all experience the same things, but we experience them. So with that said, as always, I thank you guys for the support, for listening. Until next time, get out there, enjoy your runs, have some fun, and document these crazy stories.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at heelstriker954.com.